elementary school. I would like to know the statistics, since you gathered the statistics on how many children or students came unmasked during the week. I think we should be able to have a statistic on that first week, what you thought, even if it's a best guess, as to how many students arrived without a mask that first week. I think that's a statistic that should be given to us. Would the school board, I'd like to give an idea, maybe if you're looking for ideas, would the school board consider allowing parents to sign waivers in place of medical exemption form? As parents, we are familiar with signing a waiver for various circumstances. You've already heard 2 examples of the school nurse and Tylenol. We grant lots of permission to, as parents, to the school to do certain things. We even sign waivers for activities like the Sky Zone in Lancaster. A waiver is simply stating that we understand the risk and assume the liability of that risk. You noted that the other school boards are in agreement with you. I believe that was probably just Lancaster County, but a waiver, I'd like to mention Central Bucks School District in Pennsylvania is an example of this. In their waiver, the last paragraph reads, "As a result of my request for an exemption, I hereby waive, release, and forever discharge the Central Bucks School District, its board of directors, employees, agents, administrators, and attorneys from all claims, demands, damages, actions, causes of action, suits at law, or inequity of whatever kind of nature, whether civil, criminal, or mixed, as a result of the potential increased risk from not wearing a mask." I have made copies of this form for you all to reference. Lastly, does the school board really want to take the role as parent and make health decisions for my or our children that could have possible long-term effects? I believe you think that the mandate will cover you based on your interpretation, but when it's all played out, my gut tells me that Harrisburg will potentially make you the fall people on the mental health results that will most likely come in the future. So board, I am asking you to be the first mover to stand with us as speakers tonight. I'm asking you not to follow, but to lead first, and I believe the other boards will follow you. I'm asking you tonight to reject the mandate and to give us back the choice as parents.
Good evening. I'm here along with my wife, Melissa Stolzfus. My name is Myron Stolzfus, 831 Stumfield Drive, Lancaster. Jotted just a couple notes down here, and I think there's something very fundamental going on in our country. And we're in a school. Are we already forgetting the history of our country and what has taken place around the world when we give up our freedoms so quickly? Here's my public stand on this issue. Again, something very fundamental going on here, and that is being a parent's responsibility alone in caring for our children's health and well-being. We intend, my wife and I, to continue sending our kids to Fritz Elementary without any masks. We as the parents have the moral authority and the final authority on the health and well-being of our children. This is not a decision to be left up to the school board, state of Pennsylvania, or any federal government. My wife and I will not comply with any special exemptions or doctor's notes requested by the school or the state of Pennsylvania, and this cannot be and shall not be altered by the school or any other governing bodies. We know that neither the school, state of Pennsylvania, or the federal government would be willing to sign a document agreeing to take responsibility for the negative side effects masking may have on our children, and we know that they could not and would not be willing to stand behind such a document. Therefore, we as the parents alone take responsibility for the health and well-being of our children. If we as a nation lose this ability to be the primary caretakers and decision makers for the health and well-being of our children, we're giving up the most important responsibility that we have as parents. Regardless of your party lines here tonight, we all know the track record of our federal government running nearly every program into the ground. And now we are willing to throw our children into the same. I'm here today to warn you against allowing fear to give up one of our most valuable rights as an American. We will not comply, and we will continue to fight for the freedoms of not only our children, but yours as well. And again, being that we're in a school, here's a quote by Benjamin Franklin that should always stand our test of time as a nation. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither and will lose both. Again, being that we're in a school, I'll quote John Adams saying, "Liberty must at all hazards be supported. We have a right to it, derived from our Maker, but if we have not, our fathers have earned and bought it for us at the expense of their ease, their estates, their pleasure, and their blood." If you're here tonight willing to give up your free choice as a parent for the health and well-being of your child, for the full security of a face mask, for a threat with a 99% survival rate, now that is truly alarming. And our families and those who fought and died for our freedoms are all in vain if these rights are violated. Please do not take the relinquishing of your freedom so lightly. Again, we, my wife and I, will not relinquish our rights, and we will be the final authority on our children's health.
Hi, my name's Mark Denzel. We're at 36 West Main Street. We have 4 kids, 1 at the middle school, 2 at Leola Elementary, and a 4-year-old that you don't need to know about. So first of all, let me say, I want to reiterate a lot of the people here that said, I guess the best way to sum it up is I'm a really big fan of CV. I was a Peckway kid. My wife and I were both Peckway kids. We settled in Leola because we loved the town, and then when we started having kids, and thankfully stopped, but once we had our kids, they've gone into CV, and we've never had a bad experience with a teacher. We've never had a bad experience in general. So we're really big fans. Dr. Z specifically with like the snow days and stuff. When I got your phone calls on snow days saying that my kids actually got a snow day, we were all really, really excited. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. And I think a good purpose, the good point of that is I know that because you all volunteer to serve this community, and you've done a great job, and I think that you'll continue to do that. And like we all say, that we really appreciate that this is just leaps and bounds above kind of the call of duty of what you guys signed up for. There's no normal educational decisions in this. It is mandates, masks, no masks, vaccines, all these things are being thrown at you, so we appreciate that. I want you to know that you're prayed for regularly and that the community supports you, number one. One of the things I also wanted to bring up was and Dr. Z, you mentioned it, the 92% versus 8%. And that being a factor that really shows compliance and the ease of compliance. I would say that's actually a truer picture of the parents in this community teaching their children to be respectful and follow school rules. I think if someone would like to know a true picture of what our community thinks about masks, they simply just kind of need to look around as they're out and about. When we go into stores and gas stations, 92% of people are not wearing masks. When we go to sporting events and sports practices and children are playing on the play sets at the very schools that we go to while their siblings are involved in those activities, they're not wearing masks. When children play with each other in the backyards and the streets of the communities, even right here around Leola Elementary, they're not wearing masks. That is a truer picture of preference than 92% of kids wearing masks because everyone else does, and they're just trying to be respectful. In fact, I would argue that 92% of children don't wear masks outside of the school, even if their parents probably want them to, and they just take them off as soon as they get out of. I mean, we've all been there, I get that. I also often think about when the government issued that program for No Child Left Behind. One of the things, and this might sound a little dramatic, and I don't mean it to, but I think that No Child Left Behind really kind of applies to no child will be left behind as long as they wear a mask, even if they come home with headaches every day, but their parents couldn't prove it with a signature. So now they get to sit at home and log into CVAA, which, as wonderful or awful as it is, I totally understand, is not a viable learning option for everybody. That was why No Child Left Behind was created, so that every child has the same opportunity for education. And so for many of us and for many of our kids, and having a kindergartner that was virtual last year, that is a very tough option, especially if both parents are working. It's just not plausible. And so to talk about the mandate, I think if the mandate was really about protecting the community, then all of the factors I mentioned would be considered. Instead, it targets our children's learning centers and educational environments, and the inconsistencies don't line up. This is not a battle for whether or not masks should be worn, it's a battle for whether or not parents have the right to choose what is best for the health of their children. I've heard it said several times, and I really like this phrase, that when the storms of life hit, your kids shouldn't even know it's raining. I don't wholeheartedly agree with that statement, because I do think we need to give children more credit to understand some of the things that are happening, but I think the point of that is that battles are not fought through our children, and that is what we're being forced to do, because I can't go to school with my children and say, remember, put your mask in your pocket when you get off the bus. Defy your teacher. And I don't want to tell them to do that because I respect the teacher's authority, particularly in their classroom. I understand that the teachers are concerned, and many of them in different ways. Some might agree and some might disagree, but they're the authority in the classroom. The children should follow what the teacher says. This is a very tough topic when you're trying to teach your children to be respectful, but you're also very, very concerned about their health. So since this battle cannot be fought through our children, whether or not, which basically means the battle, whether or not they should wear a mask and defy their teachers, the battle is fought right here between us and you guys, and it's not really against each other. We just have to work it out, like you said, Dr. Z. We have to come together and figure out a way to get through this. So with that being said, the ultimate question I have is, does the school board have the authority to remove the exception process requiring a doctor's signature? And respectfully, if the majority of the community would say they prefer choice, I ask that the school board be brave enough to defy the order. So in that same motive, I officially request that the school board allow more flexibility in its exemption requirements and give the power of choice back to the parents. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Cantley LaSala. We live at 140 East Main Street in Brownstown. We have two children. One is fourth grade, one is in kindergarten, and many of what has been said here tonight, my children have experienced a lot of the same, headaches and confusion and anxiety. Dr. Z, I would like to thank you for your statement and explaining about the ongoing debate regarding the legality of the Department of Health mandate. If there is an extensive debate regarding the Department of Health Secretary's order, why is the default to allow the order until it's determined to be lawful? Why wouldn't the default be that everyone can decide for themselves until the order is determined to be lawful or unlawful? Dr. Z, you also mentioned that around 92% of the school district was willing to wear a mask. I would like to ask, when did we become a district that is okay with just being willing to comply? I want my children to be in a school district that desires for their children to want to go to school, thriving in their education, excited to show their projects in class. My fourth grader told me that her favorite part of the first day of school this year was hugging her friends for the first time. She was excited, and then the rug was ripped out from under her. We echo other parents in the same room, like I said before. Please honor the parents' decision to navigate our children's health and their safety. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carrie Martin, 6 Grebel Court in Ephrata. I want to start by saying I appreciate your comments, Dr. Z, at the beginning there, and noting that you highlighting the 504 exception. And while I respect the parents who have children who have a legitimate reason for that exception, I guess I would say, is it really right for children who are completely healthy to file for a disability just so they don't have to wear a mask? So while I see that that is a potential workaround, I'm not sure that I like that workaround to have a school full of healthy children who then receive, being stamped or labeled as having a disability just so they don't have to wear a mask. So I want to challenge that as being our way to get around it. Instead, you know, I support and stand with a lot of the parents who have already shared. So I would sign a waiver, as was highlighted, and also the virtual option, just a quick note on that. While that might be an option, do we really want a bunch more kids at home doing virtual where we already have kids that are doing too much screen time, and I guarantee you, while they're doing school, they're also doing a lot more screen time, and so I think in school is where we want our kids, where there's face-to-face interaction, where they're learning to get along with each other and socializing, rather than a generation that sat at home to be educated. I don't know that that's our best option, so thank you. And again, just appreciate you as a board, the time that you give in volunteering in this way. I guarantee you're being prayed for more than ever right now, and there was a group of parents that were outside praying for you guys and for what's taking place here right now, so thank you.
My name is Tom Raff. I have a high schooler and a middle schooler who are virtual this year for reasons I will just soon explain. 109 James Street. They've been in the school system the entire time. I'm a physician in urgent care and I work for LGH. This is the point where you all can boo. I just want to share some of my experience because this is not all about the children, and I am not here to convince you about masks. They do some good, and believe me, I will be happy to get rid of the damn surgical masks when I'm able to. But we know that they do some good. No one says they're magical, as my wife is continuing to remind me. But they may do something. Now, in the last 2 weeks, part of my job is signing off on COVID. And I've seen a lot of labs. And about 2 weeks ago, I saw about 1 in 10 patients that we saw for COVID testing look like they were positive. And last week, it seemed to go up to about 50%. So if any of you think you're not going to get COVID, you are going to get COVID. It's a matter of whether you will get it vaccinated or get it wild. And that's okay, because most people, if they're healthy, like the children, are going to be fine. But the hospital is seeing increasing numbers, and I sit on committees where I know some of these numbers, increasing numbers of children in the pediatric ward with COVID. Now, some of those kids have other illnesses, and I get that. And I realize, and I do not disagree in any way whatsoever with the concerns, the issues, or the headaches, and the other things that your kids are going through. I can completely understand it, et cetera. But kids that are immunosuppressed, or kids that aren't, may get COVID and may end up in the hospital. Also, adults. And we're seeing, I saw a 37-year-old last week who I thought, I was surprised. She had an oxygen level of 94%, which is right on the edge of sending her to the ER. She had COVID, she had no other health problems, had not been vaccinated. I was quite surprised that someone otherwise healthy, who I would have seen in the spring and said, you don't have any health problems, you're in your mid-30s, you're gonna be fine, I would send him home. This lady I sent home and told her, you know what? If you get worse tonight, you need to go to the ER. And that's the group that we're protecting, whether masks work or not. The kids are going to take this home. In addition, they're going to infect the families, which, that's okay if you are willing to take that risk and you are willing to deal with those consequences. That's your constitutional right. But do be aware that that is part of the decision. Thankfully, most of your parents and grandparents have been immunized, so they have a much better chance of not dying like we saw in the first wave. But that's part of the decision-making here. And if enough kids get sick in the school, the other piece, irrespective of all I just said, is how disruptive the education is going to be for those kids. Are they going to be home like we experienced last year, every other week because someone came down with COVID in the classroom, and they realized that the kids have to be tested, et cetera, et cetera. So I just bring that to you. I'm not here to argue about masks. I have real reservations about the constitutionality or otherwise of what Governor Wolf has done. But I think these other aspects of that decision-making need to be kept in mind. It is perhaps beyond just your children. So think about that as you make these decisions for your own families and as the board has to deal with the tough decisions they make. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Floyd, and I reside at 2133 Rockville Road with my 5 kids and my wife. And I'd like to thank you guys expressly, all the CV staff. I have 2 girls in high school, one of them just left the middle school here, 2 kids in the elementary, and we love CV, period. And especially the people on the board here who are volunteers that aren't getting paid and have to deal with this. I don't envy you. So thank you for your time. But in regards to what the gentleman just said, I would echo being responsible. However, I'd like to take everybody back to one of the first, I think it was the gentle lady said in the beginning about the type of masks that the kids are coming in at, wearing. And to try to just put a little bit of perspective on that, I don't know the page because I screenshotted it, but the PA Health Department, I'm just going to read a small section here. It's also recommended that your child not wear a mask or a face covering if it's possible for choking or strangulation hazard. If your child has trouble breathing with a mask, I think that's what a lot of people have been saying here, okay? If your child is unconscious or incapacitated or unable to remove a mask without help, they should not wear a mask either. Additionally, if your child is touching his or her face more frequently while you're wearing a mask, they should not wear it because this increases their risk of being exposed to the virus, okay? This is in the wording, okay? And again, I'm not coming at you guys because I respect you. Like I said, my kids love the school, and I'm choosing to look at this, trying to look at it from your perspective, which is your administration and everything like that. However, I'm a father of 5 kids, 4 of them are in this administration, or in the school, and, respectfully, I'm not willing to forfeit the right to, say what is in the best interest of my kids, especially their health. I'm a taxpayer, and it's fine. Like I said, we love CV, okay? But big government, I don't need to say anything more. My kids are the very last thing I will allow them to dictate, okay? Having said that, to everybody that's here, I appreciate you coming, but we must remember that, unity is really important, working together, and the kids are watching us, okay? And I want to be able to, have my kids informed and represent myself in a way in front of them that they're going to go to their teachers. And even if it's not, even if they're not compliant with the rules entirely, I want them to be able to look the teacher in the eye and say it, and have a plausible, logical reason. Rationalground.com, for anybody who's interested, has all the statistics from the United States, all the other countries, and it's very plain to see what mask mandates do. It's fact. It's doctors, virologists, epidemiologists putting this stuff up there, and I could go on all night about that, but I'm just going to say that. I just hope that people can stay unified on this and remember that it's for the kids, and this, nobody can argue. Additionally, if your child is touching her face or his or her face more frequently while wearing a mask, they should not wear it because this increases their risk of being exposed to the virus. That's pretty much every elementary school and half of the intermediate, okay? And again, a father of 5, saying it respectfully, but again, thanks for what you do. I appreciate it.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Geib. I live at 190 Eagle Drive, Ephrata. I have one kid in Brownstown Elementary. I spent 8 years in the Army, retired from that, and here we are. Like, I get what the doctor was saying. You know, you want to look out for everybody else, but I went to Iraq to help another nation to achieve those rights and freedoms that we have here. I don't want to come back here to see it be stripped away just because there's a 99% chance of survival. I mean, the government, they're not doctors. They're not anybody for telling me how to live my life. Their sole purpose is to ensure that our rights are not being stripped. And I know a lot of people here have been asking you guys to stand with us for this. But I know, not to be, you know, rude or anything, but we elect you guys. You guys work for us, correct? You're there to make sure the rights of the parents are not overstepped by the government. But thank you.
My name is Theresa Milisock. I live at 47 Walnut Drive, Ephrata. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I would like to know if you guys could send out a parent survey before you make a final decision and ask the parents actually what they want, not just, you know, what bureaucracy wants or anything. And I do appreciate everything you guys are doing, but, you know, at the end of the day, it is about our kids, and we're not taking into consideration children who've been abused sexually or physically, what the masks are doing to them. And then my daughter is a middle school student. She's a social butterfly. As soon as, you know, we shut the schools down, she got very depressed. I was really worried about her. And then we started back at school last year wearing the mask, and it just got to the point where she couldn't deal with, you know, not socializing, not seeing people's smiling faces, not being able to smile at people. Kids need that. That's part of their, you know, how they learn to socially interact. They need to see them at those kind of things. They can't, you know, just, they're being dehumanized by the masks. And so I took her out of school last year, put her in virtual to try, you know, because she couldn't deal with that. And her grades, she was doing live, and there was no accountability because I have a full-time job, my husband has a full-time job. So what was she doing? A lot of times when she was supposed to be doing classwork, she was on like Instagram, Snapchat, you know, because she's a teenager. So there was no accountability there. Like if you are offering a virtual, saying, oh, you can do virtual, not every child can do that. Not every child has the fortitude to just sit down all day in front of a computer. So I just wanted to bring those up. You know, I wasn't prepared to speak, so if I kind of sound a little off key back and forth, but that's why. I just wanted to bring that up. We need to look at like all aspects of what this is doing to our children. Thank you.
My name is Jay Floyd, my wife Floyd. We're at 20 West Main Street. We have a second grader, and she doesn't like going to school. And as a dad, what am I supposed to do with that? I work 12 hours a day, I go home, she's not happy. I don't have a lot of time to invest in my children. I give that to you guys. So it's not necessarily the teacher's fault. Whose fault is it? And that's the questions I have. Like, why is my child not happy at school? We can assume it's the math, we can assume it's the grades, we could assume the teacher for whatever reason. Maybe it's her classmates. The first thing I think of is the mask. She doesn't enjoy wearing a mask, so that's my first guess. The teacher sent a text home the other day saying she's anxious. She's not overwhelmed and anxious. So there's something going on there, and I would love to know from the nurse, I don't know, from teachers, other teachers, Maybe I need to spend a day at school with her. Maybe I need to follow her around. Maybe my wife needs to. Why isn't she enjoying school? It's our oldest child. We have 3 more coming. There's a baby coming in January, and there's 2 more coming to the school. So, I don't know, I'm just pouring my heart out, like, why is she not happy at school? I remember my childhood. School was great. School had its challenges. The teacher was by my side when there was a problem. If I didn't make honor roll, I was sad. The teacher gave me a big hug. You can do it. You're fine. We love you. It doesn't matter. We love you. And that was awesome. But I don't know. It doesn't feel like my child is getting what she needs. And I don't know if it's the mask. I don't want to fight about the mask. I want to have a safe place for my child. And the mask, I don't know. Is it safe? Is it not? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the rules. I'd love to fight this all the way to the Supreme Court if that would help my child. So that's my cry. As a father, I don't know. Can we unite? Can we get together on this? Can we have a happy place for my child to go to school? Do I private homeschool her? I don't know. I don't have time. I can't teach her. I'm a painter. I'm not educated. I'm an Amish boy, practically. I mean, my dad was anyway. So that's all I have to say. I mean, that's off ad lib. I know some of you guys. I love you guys. I know Todd for many years. And we share the same heart. You're brother, man. So, like, yeah, let's do this. Let's work together. Let's not worry about Harrisburg. Let's not worry about them. I mean, we have unity here. We can do this. Let's not let Harrisburg control us with fear, whatever it might be, and let's just band together as brothers, and let's do the right thing for our kids. Thank you.
Good evening, Brian Rogers, 161 American Dream. Thank you to everyone that has shared. I couldn't agree more with most of what's been said. This is my first board meeting ever. My son is first grade. Last year for kindergarten orientation, he went through, and that Saturday we're sitting at the dining room table, and I said, "Are you excited to see all your new friends?" School starting the next day, and he said, "Dad, I don't even know what they look like." And so we pulled him, we did homeschool, which is why we need him to be in school this year. But thank you, for what you guys do. This is amazing, public service has been echoed above and beyond your call of duty in this situation. I realize the Department of Health has, driven a wedge here. I really believe that's what it's designed, to do. From a health and well-being standpoint, so I've been a chiropractor in this community for 16 years. I had a lot of pressure, well, not a lot of pressure, but a lot of family that send to private school. And I have had overwhelmingly positive feedback from parents, the Angles being some of them, about just the wonderful teachers, administrators, and so forth in this district. And so, we thought we were all in, this year. And then, of course, the mandate comes down. So I'm not going to bore you with a whole lot. The physician talked about, the little benefit of masks. I'm unaware of any more, but there are 14 random controlled trials, unbiased. This is the gold standard for medical research that look at masks. 11 of those 14 studies categorically reject masks as having any benefit. The remaining 3 say that if there is a benefit, it's so small it cannot be measured. So we should have, there should be some research foundation for this. And furthermore, my interest more so is the health and well-being of my kids and a community, a generation of kids that potentially can be affected by this. So the one gentleman talked about the German study that was published in January, 68% of kids being affected. Mind you, that was 363 physicians volunteering reports on 25,930 kids in less than 6 days. They just opened this up for these reports. Back in April 12th, NIH.gov, our own government, published a paper that said something to the effect of, the results of mask wearing in the COVID area, outlined 32 different health problems that kids have experienced with this. Somebody mentioned, just reading off the PA Department of Health website, if a kid is touching their face, that increases their risk for a virus. I'm not sure what part of putting a wet, mucus-filled, bacteria-laden rag against a kid's face makes it seem like they're healthier. And that's what I want. That's why I just feel like we need to look at this, step back, and categorically reject this notion that, one, this mandate is in our best interest, in our child's best interest. And yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at with it. I need research to prove that this is safe and effective, for my kids. From a standpoint of the mandate alone, it doesn't say anything about a doctor's order. I realize that you guys have a standard operating procedure for disabilities. The order, section 3B subsection with the exemptions, allows for a would-be medical exemption. What doctor is going to write a would-be exemption? My physician, we love him, my family physician for my son. He's 7. In those 7 years, he's been under Dr. Wright's care this whole time. He has not spent more than an hour and a half with him face-to-face in those 7 years and has never seen him with a mask on, never evaluated him with a mask on. So parents are the ones that know what is right and what is wrong for our kid. There's legal precedent for that. There's plenty of documentation for legal precedent for the parents' rights to choose, as noted by the Tylenol and cough drops and things of that nature that need to be to be approved. Otherwise, so in that exemption, you have your standard operating procedure. We're not looking for an exemption. We're not looking for any special accommodation other than allowing our child to breathe freely. And so that's what we're asking for tonight, to allow us, at least until the legality of this is figured out, sending out surveys, all that stuff is great, but you need to allow us as parents to write that an exemption in. Mind you, we maintain compliance with the order by having an exemption on file. We do not need a doctor's signature for that. Furthermore, at the end of that order, it says that a school entity should not remove people from school. So we plan, as we have to this point, to send our kid. And it's a shame. He says he's fine. I feel like my kid's scarred no matter what happens. I send him into a room where he's the only kid with no mask. He tells me he's fine, and so far it seems to be going pretty good. Or I pull him out of school, I feel like he's scarred. I put him in a mask, I feel like he's scarred as well. So it's a lose-lose for me. I realize you guys are in a rock and a hard place as well. So I thank you for what you do. I ask you to channel that inner American spirit that puts our community's best interest ahead of the government. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Arden Miller. I was not prepared to share. I have been I'm at 64 North Maple Avenue in Leola, and my husband, Darrell, is here. I have been a homeschool educator actually for the last 7 years. And last year I had a preteen that was in preteen fashion. We just weren't getting along. So I decided to send her to school. And then COVID happened. So it was, she had to come home after a few months. And she tried the CVVA. It did not work. So then I had to go back to homeschooling her. It was fine. We just dealt with it. I have my first grader that has been begging to go to school. Last year we told her it's not going to be the experience that you think it will be. Wait till this year. So she was super excited. to go back to school, or to go to school for the first time and not wear a mask, and she didn't wear a mask. And then it switched, and we told her, hey, you have to wear a mask. To be honest, she didn't care. She just loved being with a bunch of kids. She said she's fine, it's not a big deal. But you know what? I care, and my husband cares, because you guys, you're a great school board, and this is a great school district. I don't homeschool because I have a problem with public school. I homeschool because I just want more time with my children. It's just a personal choice. We like the flexibility of it. We have older children that are at home, but we're kind of flexible with when they want to go to school. The thing is, there were so many valid points about the mask and health and all that, but beyond that, as a school board here, you guys, we're in a historical point right now. You guys can be on the right side of history. In the 1960s, when people wanted to desegregate schools, one school board had to say, you know what, guys, this is not okay, even when everyone else said it was. One person had to take that stand. So what we're asking as parents is for you guys to be that one board that makes a stand, and we are with you. Be the board that is brave enough to stand, and we will stand with you and be on the right side of history. Thank you.
I'm short, so I have to pull this down. Hi, my name is Debra Cool. I currently work for SOS Lancaster, which is the outsourced company for Conestoga Valley High School. I'm a staff member. I'm also a Conestoga Valley graduate, so I'm very, very proud to be part of CV. I'm very happy to be. I've been employed for CV for the past almost 21 years.
Can we have your address real quick?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No worries.
654 Homemaker Road, Manheim, PA. So the reason I want to stand up and talk is because in my 13 and a half years of being in the school cafeteria, the past year or so, we've got to experience what it was like for the kids, for the high schoolers, kind of like an eyewitness account. There was a lot of depression. There was a lot of, the kids would always face forward in the cafeteria. Nobody could socialize with each other. They were always like a couple desks, well, kind of like seats away. So everybody faced forward. It was a very hard year. But I do want to say that in my 13 and a half years of being a cafeteria lady, I do rock a hairnet. But I just want to say I've never had the, like we are mandated to do different training. This was the first year that we've had mandated to have suicide awareness. And I think there's a reason for that. And I just think that we as a community need to support our school board, and I'm so proud of our school board. I'm so proud to be part of CV. I love being a part of it. Even if I was outsourced, I'm still there. But I just really would ask you to consider to please let it be the parent's choice. Let them just deal with the mental health of our children and think about our children, because their mental health is really detrimental right now. It's obviously evident if they're teaching suicide awareness. So, thank you.
Good evening, and thank you all for the opportunity to come up here. My name is Sherry Ross, and I live at 69 Linda Avenue in Lancaster. I have two daughters in CV School District, a third grader and a seventh grader. And my niece and nephews also came up through CV, and we love CV. We love you guys. We are grateful for what you do for our kids so that I can go to work. I'm a single parent, so it's a lot, you know. And I really am grateful for what you do, because I know that what you give is beautiful. But I'm here to tell you that we will not comply. We will refuse this. So I'm going to get right to it. First, please extend the mask grace period until after the hearing on September 16th. And please require that your teachers extend that same grace to our children. Our children. Second, we're not under an emergency order this year. So to say that, it's the same as last year, it's not. It's not the same. And it's not appropriate to compare it to that. It's not comparable. Third, the mask mandate includes an exemption for students who claim. It says for students who claim. It doesn't even say a doctor needs to claim this. It says for students to claim. I'm the parent. I claim this is a problem, and I will not stand for it. To claim that it would cause or worsen a medical condition. The order does not require a student to have a doctor's note. Please, I strongly urge you to strongly consider this piece in the order. We want an exemption without doctor's note. I refuse to say my daughter has a problem, to be having that on her record. I just don't think it's any of the government's business. Although she has had problems, and I'll get into that later. Parents hold many liabilities. I heard someone else talk about that earlier tonight. And, if you want a waiver, I'd be happy to have that conversation with you. I think we can all come to some kind of agreement together. Fourth, I can tell you with certainty that we are in the majority. My opinion is the majority here. Just look around. Not only that, I volunteered at the school. I took part of the day off work to come in and volunteer at the school during lunch period because the school said they needed us. So I did, and I was so happy to do it. I loved seeing all the kids. They were so happy. They were smiling. I was there from like 11:15 a.m. till 1:45 p.m. It was a long lunch period. I was like, are there really still more kids coming? Oh my God, I thought I was gonna die. I'm like, I gotta go back to work. But I really enjoyed it. I welcomed every student at the elementary school because I was there through the whole lunch periods, all of them. And to tell you the truth, 75% were not wearing masks. So that is the majority. I don't need to, that's it. But if you don't have to take my word for it, if you weren't paying attention that day, you can do a survey. Ask the students, ask the kids, ask the parents, send out a survey. We'd be happy to fill that out. And it can be anonymous for the kids because they're afraid. They're afraid to stand up. They're afraid to be different in the classroom, especially my 7th grader. She's like, Mom, I'm not gonna go in there. What if everyone else is having a mask on? And my 3rd grader though, she stood up. She did not wear a mask, and she's not going to wear a mask. Fifth, some school boards, I heard, and I didn't just hear it, I did read articles that LS, Donegal, North Star, Schuylkill County, Conemaugh, Bedford Township were defying the mask order. They're allowing masks to be optional. Maybe that's changed, I don't know. That was last week. Furthermore, COVID has a 99.99% recovery rate for kids that are school-aged. From the CDC website, as of July 20th, 2021, out of 74.1 million kids under the age of 17, 335 did die. One child's death is tragic. But when you look at that statistic, what are we doing? 335 out of 74.1 million in the United States. You can look it up yourself, although I'm giving you a copy of what I have here today. And I have cited everything. Maybe you aren't aware of this, but someone else did mention the German study that was done, and I'll provide that for you as well. Children should not be forced to wear masks due to the CO2 levels. This German study was published on June 30th, 2021 through the Journal of American Medical Association Pediatrics section. The study found that the average of 13
120, 13,120, and 13,910 parts per million of carbon dioxide, and we'll call that ppm, was 6 times over the allotted amount of safe carbon dioxide that children should be breathing. 6 times. It should be, the highest level is 2,000 ppm. That's 6 times past the safe amount. The results also found that younger children, around 7 years old, out of this 17 and under group, measured at 25,000 ppm. That is 10 times past the safe level of CO2, and they're breathing it for 270 minutes a day, which is really about 4.5 hours, to be honest. If they're allowed mask breaks, if they're allowed to be outside without a mask, if they're running without a mask, if they're eating without a mask. So it's about 270 minutes. We refuse to comply. There's another study. In this study, it was cited another paper of the 26,000 German children. 68% of them experienced adverse effects while wearing a mask, irritability, 60%, headache, 53%, difficulty concentrating, 50%, less happiness, 49%. Reluctance to go to school, 44%, malaise, 42%, impaired learning, 38%, and drowsiness or fatigue, 37%. Do you really want to be responsible for that? Why would you do that? You're smart people. This is not logical. The study also found that 29% of children experienced shortness of breath, 26% experienced dizziness. Hundreds of participants experienced accelerated respiration, tightness in chest, weakness, and short-term impairment of consciousness. That's a lot. That's 26%. Remember, the figure I gave you earlier, 74.1 million kids, 335 of them did pass away from COVID, apparently. But to allow, why is there blatant disregard for the health and well-being of all the healthy kids? Where's that? I strongly urge you to strongly consider these specifics in this particular study. It was posted in the American Journal, whatever I told you earlier. So anyway, what's your plan when my kids do not comply? Because I haven't heard anything about that yet. I've asked that question, but I haven't gotten an answer. Since you made this, if you're going to make I forgot what it's called, that we have to do this, right? You need to tell us what you're going to do if we don't. Okay? What are the consequences? What are you going to punish? How are our kids going to be punished? Because I'm not picking them up. I'm going to work. I have to feed my family. I'm not done.
Ma'am, you had your time. I need you to wrap up your thoughts, please.
Okay, I'll wrap it up. Thank you. They don't have an answer. So it says in the order, in 3G, section 4B, for number 5B, a school entity should not restrain, use force, or physically remove teachers, children, students, staff, or visitors, because I'm not going to wear a mask when I come to visit, by the way, who refuse to comply. It says that right in the order. So I'm asking, and it doesn't say that you have to have a doctor's note. So you cannot deny my children an education in class. So I want to know what your plan is. And again, also, the Lancaster County DA even said they will not prosecute violations. So whatever you think you're going to do, I'd like to have it in writing. I want to know what that plan is, please. you're required to provide that. I'm not done.
Yeah, I need you to wrap up your thoughts, please.
Okay, thank you. So please stop the madness, the mask madness. We clearly don't want it, and we're the majority. You know, there are charter schools. If I have to, I'll pull my kids out and put them in a charter school. That's going to cost you about $32,000, because I have 2 of them. I don't want to. Again, I'm a single parent. I got, you know, come on.
I can't stop her.
But, you know, some of the other parents and I have been talking, and, you know, if we have to, we'll take this further. And I don't think a criminal affidavit is off the table if we have to go that route. I'm sorry about that, and I don't want to do that. And Dr. Z, you're amazing, you're awesome. We love CV, we want to continue to stay here. I don't want to go to a charter school. I want my kids to go to school here with you all and the wonderful teachers and staff at CV. So please, help us do that. Thank you.
Way down. Hi, my name is Christina Groth, and we live at 1944 Pine Drive. We have a daughter that is 11 years old, and she is at Fritz. We have 4 older boys that are raised. And I just want to, I'm not going to sit here and take the time like a lot of the parents did, and I really appreciate it. I'm not going to sit here and go over statistics or say the stories that I have about our daughter. I am going to say that I back up what the majority here is speaking about. And I'm just simply saying no. Respectfully, but simply saying no. You're not making my daughter wear a mask. It just isn't going to happen. My son was in 82nd Airborne, and he did not fight for us to roll over here in this district all of our freedoms as parents. I will fight, no matter what, to do what is right for my daughter. She's a gift from God, and God has entrusted her to me and my husband, and we will do what we have to in the best interest of her. We want to teach her respect, but this is not healthy for our daughter, and she comes first. Thank you for your time.
My name is Brook Black. We live at 2219 New Holland Pike. I also was not prepared to speak here. I just came from work, so I didn't even know if I was going to be able to make it, and I was listening to it on live stream, and I support a lot of what the parents have been saying here tonight. I did send an email. Well, I have 2 boys in school here, and we have a 3rd one at home that will be coming to CV at some point. And they go to Fritz, and I sent an email to the principal and both of their teachers on Wednesday. We were relieved when we found out that masks were optional at the beginning of the school year, and we were really sad and disheartened whenever we found out. I was hopeful, because it didn't come out till 5 o'clock that Thursday, that you might have been standing up against it. But that weekend was like, you know, trying to prep my kids to come back to school with masks on and things. And I sent them on Tuesday with a mask because although I didn't agree with it, I didn't know how to respectfully stand up against that. And through some encouragement of some people not even in this district, because I know this is not just in this district that this is occurring, I got the strength and the courage to stand up for my kids. So if it's okay, I'd like to read the email that I sent. It says, "Hello, my name is Brook Black. Currently, I have 2 children at Fritz Elementary. Christian is in 2nd grade, and David is in kindergarten. I'm writing this email to each of you to discuss the mask mandate imposed on all of Pennsylvania schools by Governor Wolf, effective September 7th, 2021, and to let you know that I respectfully will not be forcing my children to wear a mask. My goal is to maintain open, respectful communication with each of you. My hope is that my children can remain at Fritz Elementary and continue to enjoy the wonderful staff and educational experiences we've come to love and appreciate without issue. I understand this is uncharted territory for all of us and a very sensitive issue for many. I understand that each building and the school district as a whole is doing what they feel is the right thing for all involved. I understand that there are severe consequences and repercussions, financial and beyond, that the school district and staff personally could face for non-compliance of the governor's order. I understand that while some may wholeheartedly agree with the mask mandate for schools, others may not, but are pressured into conforming for one reason or another. I empathize with the superintendent and all staff and administration as we navigate these challenging times, and I certainly do not envy the burden of making or enforcing these tough decisions that affect so many families in our communities. However, I do feel led to take a stand for my personal beliefs and do what I think is best for my individual children. As parents, I believe we have the right to make informed decisions that are in the best interest of our children. I feel this is a personal choice for each parent individually. In a culture that is pushing to embrace diversity and advocates acceptance and inclusion, I feel each person should also be valued as an individual. We all come from different walks of life, have our own circumstances and experiences that influence the way we view the world and the decisions we make. I strive to remain objective and open-minded, to listen to all sides, not only for this very sensitive subject, but for all situations where there are conflicting beliefs and viewpoints. I make a concentrated effort to research and dissect the information that is available in an attempt to seek the truth and do the right thing. Unfortunately, especially in today's world and in regards to this topic in particular, it is extremely challenging to decipher the truth. It seems the facts and recommendations from the powers that be, whom we are to trust have our best interest at heart, are continuously changing and plagued with contradictions. It's hard to know what to believe anymore. Ultimately, I feel the responsibility falls on each of us as parents to choose what is best for ourselves individually, as well as any children or dependents entrusted in our care. As we prepare to return to school this week with the mask mandate in place, both children verbalized disappointment and the desire not to be forced to wear masks. Tuesday, both boys complied and wore their masks all day as requested, despite our family's personal beliefs in the issue. After school, both stated how hot the masks were and that it makes it hard to breathe. Both, again, asked to not be forced to wear a mask, while also expressing fear and anxiety of getting into trouble for not listening if they didn't wear a mask. We had a long conversation. I informed both boys that I'd be sending an email to both their teachers and the principal to make them aware of the situation and our family's choice. I'm also sending cards with them that simply state our family's position that can be presented to other staff members with whom they may interact that attempt to enforce the mask mandate. I asked that Christian hold David's hand and walk him to his classroom in the morning as a sign of comfort and solidarity. Christian was even scared to do that because he knows the rule is that they go in separate entrances when they get off the bus. If a staff member stops him and questions him, I instructed him to politely and respectfully state that he's walking his brother to his classroom and then will go immediately to his own. Additionally, if a staff member stops either Christian or David and questions them throughout the day about not wearing a mask, I directed them to remain polite, calm, kind, and respectful in all interactions. I instructed them to simply hand the staff member a card that I provided them and let the rest up to myself and my husband. I do not like confrontation. I'm not trying to cause trouble for myself, my children, or my family. I'm not here to sway anyone's opinion one way or the other. I showed tremendous grace all last year as my children reluctantly wore masks the entire school year. All I want is for my children to be happy and healthy, neither of which I believe are achieved through the use of masks. I heavily emphasize to the boys that no matter what, respect one another despite our differences, extend grace, and show kindness. I'm asking for the same courtesy in return with these simple requests. Please do not force them to wear masks. Please do not treat them as troublemakers. Please do not belittle them or allow them to be bullied. And please do not deny them education. Each individual has the right to make their own informed decision regarding
they feel is best for themselves and their children. My husband and I have chosen not to force masks upon our children. This decision was not made lightly, but was the result of much thought, prayer, and careful consideration. And then I just closed it. But I do want to say, I consider myself an intelligent person. I'm a nurse. I work in the healthcare field. I had COVID in January. My son, who was in first grade at the time, missed an entire month of school because of the guidelines that, from my first positive test date, and then beyond 10 days from that, he had to quarantine for another 2 weeks because I could be shedding viruses for the first 10 days. The entire month of January, he missed school, in addition to the 2 weeks he but, between Christmas and New Year's vacation, he missed a month and a half of school. And for nothing, really, because I didn't isolate in my house with my kids. Like, I stayed home, I didn't go out in the general public, but I have 3 kids. There's no quarantine and isolation when you have 3 kids under the age of 6. So, and I'm not afraid of this. I work in healthcare. Yes, I know it's a real virus. I know it hurts people terribly. I know it kills people. But I also know there's a lot of people that walk around and test positive and don't even know they have it. So I implore you to take those things into consideration also, because the collateral damage and the long-term consequences that come as a result of forcing a mask when it's not necessary far outweighs the risk of COVID in the healthy population, especially kids. These kids are healthy, and if you have kids that are immunocompromised and that you're concerned about, I think that you should advocate for your children and do what you think is best for them, but that doesn't mean that you put a blanket statement and you force everybody in the district to wear a mask because you're afraid.
Hi, I'm Erica Gensel, 36 West Main Street in Leola. I was not going to talk. I felt like my husband did a great job, but not much was said about the middle school. My daughter, the first week of school, chose not to wear a mask and felt very comfortable doing that. And then when this all started, she said, "Mom, I'm not going to school without a mask because I'll be bullied for not wearing one." And that was very discouraging. My 2 boys have been attending school without a mask, feeling like they have support from their teachers, from their administration. But as far as the middle school is concerned, I don't feel that way. She didn't feel safe to not wear a mask, and I feel like that's a problem. I do wish that you would do a survey, like someone else suggested. Ask what the parents actually want. Find out what the majority is looking for. I don't feel like the 92% is accurate based on my daughter not feeling comfortable to come to school without a mask. So please consider doing that, even if it doesn't take it anywhere, just so we know that there's other people on our side. So thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Darrell Miller, 64 North Maple Avenue in Leola, and I wasn't going to talk either. My wife did a little bit ago. But something that's been mentioned here several times is bullying and standing up to bullies. And it's something that we've talked to our kids about for a real hard push the last, 5-10 years to stand up. And we have a bully in Harrisburg. And I think it's time for you as a school board to stand up to the bully and tell them that we're not going to do this. And it's time for us parents to stand with our kids as well as they fight against this. Unfortunately, they're the ones that are taking the blunt of it, because they're the ones in school. They're the ones that it's been talked about, feel different if they're not going to do it, and all that stuff. And so I guess I asked for the school board to stand up and against bullying, like you've been trying to teach our kids for 10 years, really strongly for 10 years. Also, I've never been to a school board meeting, so I have no idea how these things work, but there's been several questions that have been asked, and I guess I'm wondering when we get answers to these. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm tall. My name is Scott Hershey, and I live at 152 South Eastland Drive. Lifelong resident of the district here. My family grew up here. I grew up here. I'm a graduate of the school. I have a child who has already completed his education in the school as well. I have 2 children in school still. One of the things I sit here and I hear everybody talking is the general consensus in almost everything that happens is the welfare of our children. Am I right? When I was in school, this is back a few years, we had head lice break out. Okay? Some kid came to school, had head lice, all of a sudden a bunch of them had it. And there was a note sent home by the school nurse saying, hey, there's head lice in the school, you're expected to keep your child home if they have it. And we had the option of whether we could come to school wearing a hat or not if we wanted to protect against it, and that was left up to the parents. Throughout my school term, we had in 1991, we had a schoolmate murdered in school. Okay, not in the school, and the school's concern at that point became the students, the psychological well-being of the students. You're going to have counselors available. You hear that on TV a lot. There was a death of a student in a school, and they're going to have counselors available. All of this with the intent of making our children comfortable and taking all of the stress and anxiety and burdens off of them. I would have to ask why this is different. I raised my boys, I'm an old school kind of guy. I raised my boys that they need to be tough and they need to be smart. Both of our young boys have broken bones in the last 2 years, and they didn't cry as much as they cried the first day when they came home from school. And that bothers me to see that, because my boys aren't like that. I mean, we have 11 and 12-year-old boys. They're constantly fighting. They're not afraid. They don't see that pain. To sit down with my youngest to the point that he's in tears. I don't want to go back to school. I don't want to go back. I have this horrible headache. I feel helpless. And I'm sure most of you are parents. You know that when your child is upset, you want to do whatever you can do to make it right for them. If your child's hurt, you want to make it right for them, and you'll go out of your way. Parents will literally fight for their children. I'm not advocating that, but I think it's worked in the past, giving the parents the choice. I had to sign a letter earlier this year or last year, I don't remember, on whether or not our child could participate in sexual education. That was our choice. We could say yes, we could say no. So there is room for exemptions, there is room for releases of liability. I just wish that that there was a common answer for all of us. I know your hands are tied, and it's a very tough situation, but I ask that you please consider all aspects of it, that's all. Thank you.
Before we move on, all right.
My name is Charles Sensnag, live at 2077 Creek Hill Road. I know we're 2 hours into this and don't want to keep wearing you guys down, but I just want to reiterate that we understand you have the legalities that you guys need to navigate. What we're asking is that you did this past week with some grace period. Wherever you found the gray area for that, we're asking that you extend that. Give us parental exemption. We would love for you guys to stand up, fight for this. One person earlier said we'd love for you guys to be the leader of this, be the school board that stands up and fights against this, and others will follow. I truly believe that would happen. Whether you do that or not, I don't know. I would just love the parental exemption. You've heard, from a lot of us. I don't know if you'll hear from many more or not, but for every person that was up here speaking, there is tens more that agree with us, and you can tell by the applause that we get. So you have the community here behind you to give us the parental exemptions. You have the community behind you to fight. So I just want to reiterate that, and I'll be done. I know we want to get out of here.
All right, so anyone else before we move on in our agenda? I don't want to leave anyone out who wants to.
I just wanted to, my name's Brooke, again, 2219 Inland Pike. I just wanted to comment on, I know that there are the exceptions that they're trying to move forward with. The principal called me on Wednesday, very understanding, we had a great conversation. I know, like many have said here, I know your hands are tied, but we're just pushing that you do what's best for our kids. And her response, which I know is just, that's just the way it is, like that the only exemption that this mandate is allowing is for a medical exemption. My kids don't need a medical exemption. My kids are physically able to wear a mask. I think the long-term damage psychologically is worse, but I can't prove that right now. And I'm not asking for a medical exemption. I don't want my kids to be taking advantage of the kids that aren't truly deserve to have the special attention of these disability exemptions for different things. Like, my kids don't need that, but it still should be a parent's right to determine what's in the best interest of the child. So.
Sorry, I know I've already talked too, but there is one other thing I wanted to mention and forgot. I saw that Governor Wolf mentioned the last time he spoke about possibly putting vaccine clinics in schools all across Pennsylvania, and also making it available to test children that may be distributing or showing signs of COVID. I don't know if this is going to happen. I sure hope not, because I really just want you to know that parents are watching closely. If that does happen, there will be a mass exiting, I'm afraid.
Hi, my name's Olivia Hess, and my dad asked me not to provide an address, but I'm actually a CV alum. I'm currently at Millersville University, majoring in secondary education, so I know the system. I've been in the system for 12 years, and I have two younger siblings that are still in the system. I have a sister who's a junior in high school. She's over here with me tonight, and I have a brother in elementary school. So I've seen how much COVID can affect a student's senior year. I've seen it happen twice now, and I'd really like to not see it happen a third time. And if by wearing a mask we can slow the spread of COVID, I don't think that's a problem. I understand that I'm not a parent, and I can't understand what you all are going through. However, I am an older sister, and I do have my parents that I've talked to a lot. My mom made this really great analogy that has stuck with me, that if you had an infectious disease on your skin and refused to wear a Band-Aid, but could spread it to many other people around you, that seems very silly if you could simply cover it, but you refuse to because, oh, I don't like wearing Band-Aids. If it's as simple as wearing a mask, I don't see the problem. And I know a lot of you don't agree with me in this statement, but I have a 10-year-old brother who has worn his mask to school when he's been asked to, and he hasn't had a problem with it. And my mother is actually a preschool teacher, And last year, her students wore masks, and they all complied. It's little children, ages, she teaches like 4 and 5. If my brother, who's 10, understands that wearing a mask is not just about him, it's about the people around him, it's about the people that he's affecting, his peers, and who they're affecting beyond them. It's not just the kids, it's everybody that they are in contact with as well. If he can push through and wear his mask for the day, I'm not quite sure why it's such an issue. He actually has had breathing issues in the past, so I understand where there are issues with children wearing masks. I understand that there are circumstances where it's not healthy for the child. However, I also know that through extensive research, it has shown that masking slows the spread, and I would really hate to see a third year of seniors have their year ruined by COVID.
Hey, not acceptable.
Sorry, since we're allowed seconds, I thought I'd go real quick. Mark, 36 West Main Street, Leola. I just wanted to say, because I don't like to hear the disrespect either, but I just wanted to say for the two people that shared differing perspectives, I would just want to applaud you for your bravery to do that. I think that's really cool. And I also wanted to say that if you guys do decide to buck the system, I don't know what the state does, if they like try to fine you back to the Stone Age or anything, but if you want to see community support, we will do the biggest bake sale you've ever seen to cover those expenses. That's all I want to say.
All right, I'll say this again. Is there anyone else? All right, well, thank you, everyone, for taking the time to share your opinions. At this point in time, we are going to move on in our agenda. So with that, I believe we have is Wes. Wes, are you here to talk about the middle school?
Hi, good evening, board. I have I think 8 change orders to present this evening, which represent a...
Wes, can you get into the mic more?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that good?
Yep.
I have, I think, 8 change orders to present this evening, which represent a cost savings...
Wes, just pause for a second.
I can't get on yet.
Technical issues.
That's fine. We'd have to go without it.
Okay. Sorry, there's no tech at this point in time, but Wes, as Dr. Z tries to get his stuff back up, but go ahead.
That's fine. All right, the first 3 are from the site contractor. PCO 21 represents a cost of $3,027.07, and it was due to differing field conditions that differed from survey conditions at the close to the existing middle school, regrading that was required because of that. PCO 23 is another sinkhole that needed to be remediated near the retaining wall that was constructed at the existing middle school. And finally, there's a change order associated with converting portions of the walking trail to asphalt from the specified gravel mix. Under the general contractor, I have 2 change orders representing a credit of $20,284.77. PCO 13 represents a credit for deleting a layer of gypsum wallboard at the bulkhead over the folding partition. This would match the detail found at Brownstown Elementary, which we have, in speaking with Ken and others, we have found provides sufficient acoustic privacy between the classrooms. There is also a change order, PCO 14, that represents Costs associated with saw cutting the precast plank above the elevator machine room due to mechanical duct coordination needed with mechanical ducts. Finally, for the electrical prime, there are 3 credits. The first is PCO 6, which represents the credit savings for the elimination of the hold opens from the electrical scope. These will be provided under the hardware scope. The second is PCO 20, a credit of $6,090, which represents the elimination of electrical service out to what was to be a future possible storage shed. That will no longer be there due to required rerouting of the gas line per UGI. And finally, we have a credit representing the temporary electrical cost occurred through June, July, and August, which is per the agreed upon rate, and it is a credit of $1,906.84.
I have a question.
Yes.
One of these items was identified as having been missed in the design stage. So that omission gets charged to whom?
Which one is it?
It was, I didn't mark down what it was for, but it was for $3,027.
Okay, under the site, yes. I'm sorry, I didn't.
My question was, that since that was an omission, who pays for that?
These are omissions, so that is generally per contract covered under the district's cost. It's not considered an error.
My other question has to do with what was done at the sinkhole that's over at the middle school. And that's okay, the current middle school. We can roll that into this construction project, even though
It's part of the scope of the new middle school. We did some work throughout the campus, and that was discovered as part of the, if some of you have seen as you came in tonight, that small retaining wall. It was found.
No problem with having that as part of.
It's all covered under the new middle school project.
Okay, thank you.
Board, these will be on the consent agenda. Do you have any other questions for Wes? All right, thanks, Wes.
Thank you.
Dr. Smith. Okay.
Good evening, Board. I'm here to talk a little bit about the benchmark program. So it's my understanding you have in front of you an agreement for the benchmark program. Benchmark program is a nonprofit that was started in 2014 by a gentleman named Will Kiefer, who is a graduate of Franklin and Marshall College. He's the founder and executive director. It was a program that was designed to serve the community, in particular vulnerable youth and underserved youth. 5 years ago, I met Will through a random acquaintance who, after learning a little bit about me, said that it would be, he pretty much insisted that Will and I needed to meet, that we shared similar goals in terms of serving youth, and again, in particular, underserved youth. What Will and his team saw was that many students were not responding to traditional therapy, prevention programs, and even probation. Enter weightlifting. One of Will's passions was weightlifting, and he saw this as a vehicle to be able to serve youth. And so 5 years ago, Will has his own gym down in Lancaster, and he runs as I said, a nonprofit that he takes really anybody that wants to come from any school district, and that's open 5 days a week. Will also runs a program through probation where students are able to be assigned to his program. What we're looking at doing is kind of a satellite branch where it has nothing to do with probation, where we're just trying to identify students that might need some additional help and maybe are into weightlifting, can be male or female. We're looking to serve approximately 20 students 2 days a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2:45 to 4 p.m. after school. So Will and his team would come out to our school to be able to service those students. They wouldn't have to go anywhere, although they're always welcome in his gym in Lancaster as well. I'm just going to share a quick story, a success story. So at a previous school that I was at, we had approximately 12 students that were involved in the program. When it first started, we had a young man who came from a single-family home, had 5 brothers and sisters, at one point was homeless in his life. We were able to get him into the benchmark program and work closely with Will. This past year, approximately 2-3 months ago, he graduated from boot camp. So when we first got him into the program, had no direction in his life and so forth. Here's a note that he just sent me after he graduated from boot camp. Said, "Thank you for everything you've been for me and all the young men who were up on the hill with me. God bless you and the Smith family. I can't wait to show you how baggy this uniform looks on me and show you the young man that you have helped me to become. Have a good day, sir." So just one of many success stories. I could go on and on of stories that the benchmark program has helped. So we're really excited. I wrote a grant to be able to fund the program. It wasn't picked up by the CVEF Foundation because of being salaries, and they don't cover salaries, but we had a community member that stepped up to cover the cost of the program for this year. Any questions I can answer?
Who does the screening?
For the students?
Yeah, to identify.
They all come through me so that I can help kind of make sure it's the right fit for the student. I meet with any students. So I asked all the teachers, we have a list of names that we're going through, speaking with students and parents to be able to screen those students to see if they're interested.
You get from teachers.
Say it again?
The names that you screen are recommended to you by teachers.
Correct.
And are there specific criteria that they have to meet?
No specific criteria. I mean, we're really looking for youth that might need some direction. So we'll look at grades, we'll look at attendance, we'll look at academics. Sometimes we get a student that maybe is doing well in 2 of those, but just needs some kind of outlet. So they haven't been successful in traditional sports or other activities or so forth, and this might be the avenue for them.
Dr. Smith, I just want to echo the board, not that this, anyway, we had a young man at our company, worked part-time this summer, came through, well, actually, he's part of the benchmark program, and I'm telling you what, we probably haven't had such a respectful, young, hardworking man as what we had with this guy. So I truly believe that the program works, because they don't always just they don't just identify at-risk youth and help them, but they help build into them respect, hard work, like all those kinds of things that we look for in our young people. So it's a...
And leadership capacity. One of the things that we saw in the previous school that I was at is, we had the program for 4 years before I left, and what we saw was as the students continued to progress through there, the mentorship that they were able to provide to other young men that were, and women, that were in, 9th grade and coming up. So it was really great to see over those years that, them just become leaders of the school.
Do you think you're going to be able to maintain this after this year?
I'll find a way. I did it for 4 years in the previous school, yeah. And Will is willing to work with me on that, whether we have to write grants or find the money. He's been committed, ever since we met, he said that he'd go wherever I went. And so here we are, trying to bring it to CV.
So for the board that's not aware, in my day job, I work with Will a lot and with my students. So I would say, if there's any program out there that can really target at-risk youth, it's Will and his program. They are legit. They are really, really good at what they do. They can get to students like no one else can. So
I agree.
I would definitely vouch for them and how they work with students. And it's not just students. They will work with the entire family to get that student to turn over. So I think it's great. I wish we can do some more with him.
This will be on consent for next week.
And this will cost $5,000?
If you got the money.
But you got the money?
Yep.
So can we just modify it that it doesn't say CV school district shall pay benchmark $5,000? Is that?
So if we got a private donor.
Is the private donor going to pay us, then pay benchmark? Or,
Yeah, so the money's coming in as a donation, contribution and donation to us, so we're paying the money out.
got it. Okay,
So that's,
never mind.
yeah.
Okay. Good.
I let the money person take care of it.
Thank you, Dr.
And if you
Smith.
can also just add attachment A, I would love to read the statement of work.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
I said, if you can add attachment A, I would love to read the statement of work.
Okay.
Good. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks. All right, Ms. Fleischer.
One other thing about the benchmark program. So we worked on the agreement with that. There was a school in the county that had, it wasn't benchmark, but a similar type of program that Mr. Frankhauser had worked with. So he sent me that agreement and we modified it. And so he's seen it and I think we're all good. So. All right, so I have a couple items on the agenda. The first Ken was going to do, but he's actually at another meeting. So I'm going to go through this with you. This one should be pretty easy because you have seen a very, very similar agreement with Element Environmental before. They are the company that we hired to look at the testing and design of any asbestos material when we were doing the renovation of Brownstown. The real difference between this one and the one that you had approved for Brownstown are actually most of the bullet items on page 1, and the reason for that is that at Brownstown, because of the age of the building and the materials that were used in that building, we were very comfortable that we knew the couple of spots where we may have some asbestos issues and that most of the rest of the building was fine. Certainly, when we're looking at Leola, it's a much different building, a much older building, much different picture, so we are not as comfortable that we know exactly what we may find. So as a result of that, there is going to be some testing that's going to need to take place. It's actually denoted in the bullet items at the bottom of that first page. We are concerned that there may be some places where it's concealed, maybe behind a blackboard or something, where the glue sticks that are used to kind of put those kind of things up. That tends to be a typical thing that you will see in a construction like this. And so then the last, actually the first bullet on the top of page 2 is the last bullet that's different from the prior contract, where it talks about what they'll do then is present us, once they do the testing, a detailed report, give us some recommendations and also some cost estimates that can go in the budget, kind of what this is going to look like. So we sort of know what all is there and what may need to be done. So outside of that, the rest of the agreement, the different tasks that they're going to provide, again, are similar to what you, almost exactly to what you've seen before. From a cost standpoint, when we did Brownstown, the costs that were laid out further back in the agreement were just under $14,000. This one totals to about $15,000. So we're only really expecting it to be about $1,000 difference, with the exception of Task 4, which is the periodic testing that we will have them do. And that testing is actually done, first of all, on an as-needed basis, and then on a daily rate. So I didn't include that in the $15,000 because we just don't know how many we're going to need. So I'll take any questions that you have on that, and if I can answer them, I will. If not, I will get with Ken tomorrow and get back to you. But if you don't have questions, this will be on consent.
Correct.
Not to steal Mr. Schertzer's thunder there, but on consent for next week as well.
Correct.
Okay. All right, next one is the Valbridge. Again, this one should be pretty easy because you've seen proposals from Valbridge before. Mr. Frankhauser and I have been talking about a couple of appeals that are left over from last appeal cycle. I know I haven't shown you the ones for this summer's appeal cycle. Don't worry, you don't really want to see it. It's all kinds of bad news. So we're going to stay focused on last year's for the time being. And this one is for Costco, and so we need to get some idea of what we think the appropriate assessed value is versus what the company is going to the Board of Assessment, which they've already made their decision, so now it goes into the court system to decide. And currently valued at about $8.6 million. If you recall, the County Board of Assessment appealed to drop it, the common level ratio, so it has been decreased to about $7.2 million. So we are going to be appealing that and trying to work out some sort of settlement with them. And one thing you will notice on this one that was different than the last one that you approved is that this one also references the City of Lancaster and Lancaster School District. And so we are going to be sharing in the cost on this one. So the prior one, I think, was $8,000 or $8,500. That was all on us. This one will be shared between the two entities. So if you don't have any questions on that, again, it's actually the same agreement with the exception of the property and the cost that you've seen before. But if you have questions, we'll take them, and if not, that will be on consent for next week as well.
Good.
All right, then I think the last thing that I have before I turn this microphone over to Dr. Mann are some policies. So again, when we did the policy review schedule this year, we're doing a couple of more policies each meeting to try to get through them. And I'm sorry to throw a wrench at you, but in going through these first couple of policies, we found some places where we thought we were maybe missing something. So unfortunately, we're doing 5 because we're adding a policy. So the very first policy, which in the 600s is the finance section, is financial organization, and really all the changes there are just title changes. So that one should be pretty easy. But hopefully we don't have any questions on that one. And again, I'm just going to keep rolling. Stop me if you need me to slow down or anything. The next one, 602, and so the way the budget is laid out is we had 602 and then 603, which is budget prep, and then the new one that we added is 604, budget adoption. What we had done in the past was sort of kind of put all of that into one policy, and it read sort of clunky. And so when we looked at some of the sample policies from some of the other districts, it just seemed much cleaner, even though it's more policies, to break them out and title them what they really are instead of having multiple subject matters under the same policy title. So in the 602 policy, what we've really done is we've kept the purpose, but then when you get into the delegation of responsibility, we've actually used Manheim Township's policy as an example. There were a couple of changes that we needed to make to it. For example, they didn't, in their annual estimate of their enrollments, delineate how many years that they do that, and so we added some 5-year language there. The only thing that was on our prior policy that you won't see listed in that list are the 2 areas that were under fund balance and then general fund debt. And interestingly enough, what you will find if you go back and look at the old policies is the language that we have on here, one on the fund balance referencing the 5 to 10%, the other on the general fund debt referencing the 18%, were referenced in other policies at different parameters. So we weren't even really lined up across the policies. So we're actually going to take those out of this policy, and you'll see them actually show up in one of the later policies. And the beginning part of that policy is really just some wording changes on that one. And then we move to 603, which is the budget prep policy. And again, one of the things, remember, we try to do with policies is not repeat stuff that's already in code. So we tried to slim this one down as well, and some of the things that are related to budget adoption that are in the old 603 policy now moved to the 604 policy. And we used Eastern Lancaster County School District as an example for the 604 policy. So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. If looking at the 603 budget prep policy, we did try to keep that just related to budget prep. There were a couple of things from the Elanco policy talking about how the board is going to study the budget, and then that the superintendent or CFO determine the manner in which the budget is compiled, which Dr. Z and I do. So those seemed like sort of no-brainer things to add to our 603 policy. And then, again, a couple of wording changes on kind of the list of budget preparation, but most of the rest of that you can see in the policy changes.
I have a question on this one.
Sure.
Can you talk into the mic?
It is on?
Get closer.
I can't tell, okay.
Yeah.
I would like to know why it was felt it was necessary to tell the board members that they should study it, and to tell them that after it's passed, they're obligated to support it. It just seems to me it leaves the idea of budget prep and goes into the idea of board governance, and I'd like that whole piece removed.
Yeah, we can absolutely remove it. It wasn't there before. It was something that was in Elanco's policy that wasn't in ours, so that's why we added it.
I agree with that. I don't like the wording of that at all whatsoever.
Okay, sure.
Go.
Is the other sentence paragraph that we added okay?
I'm sorry, what?
Is the other one that we added okay? The superintendent or CFO shall determine the manner in which...
My concern, that's the other place where I had a concern, and it's sort of generalized. I appreciate that the level of work that your office and the administration, all the way down to the principals, put into budget prep. However, the board does have some input, and it seems to be missing from its entire policy. At some point, it should at least mention, as an aside, with the approval of, or the board, but it seems as if the board is out of it, and quite frankly, over the years, whenever there were major changes in how we did budget prep, it's because the board initiated that. That's how we got rid of our old budget process and got back to zero-based. So I think the fact that it should at least mention board input, not just final approval. And I think it should also address the fact, or at least mention the fact that during preparation and the various steps, it will be presented to the board in that process. I think to leave us out of that completely is erroneous.
Yeah,
I'm not quite sure how you fix that all the way, except for the deletion, but I think you need to read this and put the board back in the process too.
So I'll be honest with you, the reason that we put the two additions in was actually, and maybe we just, to Mr. Biddington's point, maybe we need to change the wording, was to do what you said. So the first one is to make sure that the board is captured as having a role in the budget prep. So when you talk about the approval, we'll get to the board's role in the approval when we go to the next policy, which is adoption. But the board's role in the budget prep, that was sort of the intent, because we've talked in the past about, do we do zero-based? Do we do an allocation model? Why do we do the model that we do? We've had a lot of those conversations, and maybe that wording doesn't capture it very well, but the intent was to be able to say that the board has a role in it.
In this particular one, the other thing it seems to mention about the board is approval.
That's the vibe I got as well.
Okay. All right, well, maybe we can chat like offline later and come up with some wording
that's fine.
I mean, if either of you have some suggestions, I will absolutely take them, and we can try to wordsmith something that meets kind of, that's what we were trying to do, so maybe we just need to find the right words to do it.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. All right, and then as I mentioned, the 604 policy is new because we did not have a specific budget adoption policy before. So if you had looked at our old policy and gone to under 603-300, you would see where we went through all the adoption of the proposed budget and then final budget adoption and what all the advertising requirements and all of those things were. And so we've used, again, Elanco's policy as a model to kind of go in, and these policies are a little bit, the new PSBA way of doing it is a little bit more narrative than it is kind of bullet by bullet, but it does cover all of those adoptions, as prescribed by the code. It just does it a little bit differently than we had in our, the second section of our old policy. And then lastly, and this actually got marked as a new policy, but I do not believe that it is. The 605 policy, if you remember, we had this issue at one point where we sent the policies to PSBA, and some of them got sent and some of them sort of disappeared. I believe that the 605 we did have, and it sort of disappeared. The last update that we had to it was in 2008. But we are trying to take a look at, I mean, that policy really just went through and delineated every single type of tax by name that the board can do. So the Elanco one would be our recommended change because it doesn't delineate every single individual tax. For example, the per capita tax, we have chosen not to levy. We still have the authority to do it. So I like this generic language better that just refers to the taxes and doesn't lay them out individually. So if you don't like that, we can certainly go back. They're your policies, not mine. Go back to the old version of the 605. But when in looking at, I think we looked at both Elanco and Manheim Township, we saw a couple of samples that were very similar to what we're presenting to you tonight. So we decided that we would recommend that option instead. Any other questions on those?
Phyllis, I have just one little question on 601.
601.
In the 601.2, the board has the authority and responsibility to prepare and adopt the budget, levy taxes, incur debt. Do we no longer have the authority to invest? Because I assume that's not the same as incurring debt.
You do, but there is a specific investment policy.
But does this not?
So it's not part of this section.
Okay.
And again, our process in doing this is we kind of go into board docs and we pull down some samples. We try to use districts that are similar to us. A lot of times that's similar in the geographic area. Sometimes, though, what we find is that the ones that are near to us geographically haven't been updated in a while, so we have to kind of expand our horizons. That doesn't mean, obviously, that we have to take the language that they give to us. So the language that we pulled in the 3 or 4 samples that we looked, all were very consistent in that, Dr. Mead, they dropped that language. We must have added it at some point. And so we can certainly add it back in if you would like to have it there and in the other policy. That's perfectly fine. It's easy enough for us to add another word back in. We were just trying to make it similar to the other samples that we had reviewed.
Okay, I understand that. It just seems that under the general financial organization of all financial authority, it makes sense to me to also include the authority to invest. If that's part of the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. We can add it back in. The reason that we dropped it was because we were trying to mirror the language.
I understand.
So.
It just didn't make sense.
Yeah, it's fine. No, we can add it, sure. Any other changes, comments? No. Okay, so we'll add that back in, and then we'll have a conversation about this other language and maybe cleaning that up, and we'll then bring those back to you for first reading next week. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Phyllis. All right, Dr. Mann.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. I have the privilege to share with you the comprehensive plan that we are proposing, and we had talked a little bit about this previously at some other meetings. So tonight, with the presentation, I gave you 3 documents. One is the PowerPoint presentation. The other one is an executive summary, I'll call it, which I will go over. And the third one is actually the plan itself as it's presented out of the state system, the computer system. All right, so those are the 3 documents that you have linked there tonight. In this presentation, I'm looking at approaching it in two parts. The first part is the background to comprehensive planning and why we have to do it and so forth. So the why behind it. And the second part is the actual plan itself, the what and the how we're going to do all this. All right? So on this first slide, just a couple points to highlight. When you're looking at this, this is the model that the state has put out. Those of you that have been in, whether as parents, board members, maybe even educators at some point, the systems have changed over the years. And so this is the current model that the state is using. So here, what we're looking at and focusing on are the ideas of collaborating. the ideas of making sure that we are moving the district forward. What are you looking at?
Shall I keep going?
Yep, keep going. So when you look at the comprehensive planning, it's a continuous process, obviously. It's not something that should be stagnant and not engaging. So one of the things that the state had changed in this process is the opportunity and the actual requirement of it being an ongoing process, which I think is good, because it's important for us as a school district to, once we put this plan in place, to keep working on it, to keep it moving us forward as a school district. And so in that one slide there, it talks about a number of sections within it. Key pieces would be the core foundations, in my opinion, the needs assessment that we look at, as well as the action planning that takes place in putting a comprehensive plan together. So any comprehensive plan has to be rooted in foundations. So looking at our mission and vision, Conestoga Valley mission and vision, this is actually the mission and vision we put together several years ago, on probably, I think, the first, or the previous comprehensive plan. And we felt that, as a committee, that this is pretty good. It's still relevant. And so using that as a foundation and a core area as a springboard, so you have the mission and vision. The next slide, again, just highlighting something major, is the profile of a CD learner. Again, an area that we spent a lot of time and effort and got community feedback on and put together through that feedback and committee work and develop what we call now the profile of a CB learner. Again, a foundational document, a foundational piece in guiding us forward. Thirdly, when you think about the Conestoga Valley District, you got to think about our students, our demographics. And so I provided this, again, just to remind you of how our district is made up, the various numbers that go along with that. So you have that. I don't need to read that to you. And then to kind of break it down a little further, when you look at students that are economically disadvantaged, I provided a breakdown as it relates to each building. So you have those numbers there. So when you think about comprehensive planning, you're taking a look at what high-performing districts do. And so this slide here, again, summarizes the key pieces that go along with and should be part of a comprehensive plan. That it be clear and focused. That it be, have high levels of collaboration. That it's an ongoing process. That is rooted in curriculum and instruction and assessment and foundational to standards. It's looking at figuring out where we are heading as a district and how we are providing quality programming for our children. In this particular slide here, again, this is more that background, that why that the state's providing. We're looking at improving teaching and learning for all students. And a key piece there is all. So if you go back to the mission and vision, back when we developed it, I think it was probably 2012, back then we highlighted the fact that all learners, we need to be looking at all learners. And here, in this particular model, here the state's saying we have to be focusing on all students. It's obvious, but it's important for us to look at how are we doing that. And so here, they identify 5 core conditions: empowered leadership, for example, continuous improvement, focus on student-centered learning and activities, looking at how we implement and use data to drive our decision-making, as well as how do we allocate resources within the district. And they identify these as essential practices. All right, now let's kind of shift into the second phase of this and taking a look at how this whole process went down. In the state of Pennsylvania, they talk about phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 school districts, and all that basically means is how they divided up the districts to be a part of this process. Conestoga Valley is a phase 2 district. So when you see phase 2 district, that's all that's saying is we're in that group. And what I provided here for you is the timeline that originally was put forth. And obviously, we had the COVID pause, and the state has offered some extensions, and so you have that. The extension, this really should have been submitted if COVID wouldn't have happened, would have been this time last year, we've been doing this. Because of the COVID component and getting that pause, we're just a year behind, and the state has accommodated for that. As far as local input and so forth, we had a community group that came together that had approximately 20 members on it. It was parents, community members, teachers, administrators, school board member, and we met in the beginning in the winter of 2020. And we had several meetings during that period of time, and then the COVID piece, and then there was that pause, and then we reconvened this past year to continue to work, and so forth. So when we did that, what is important to note is that we looked at priorities and identified 4 basic priorities. That was the state recommends anywhere from 2 to 4 priorities, and as a committee, we recommended, we identified 4. And it's basically looking at the Future Ready Index. So you're looking at the data that comes out of the Future Ready Index. So it's not something just arbitrarily, it's rooted there. The steering committee provided input as members of the community in guiding this process. Also, we looked at local needs assessment, and the way we handled that was we had the building principals and the subject area supervisors go through a process of doing a self-evaluation, and they collected the data, and then they provided that to us as a steering committee, so we had that information to work from. And also, we looked at initiatives already being undertaken in the district. For example, the profile of a CB learner. We had put a lot of time and effort in moving in a specific direction, and you don't want to forget that or overlook that we need to incorporate that, because we saw that as a priority as a district to incorporate it into our comprehensive plan so that it is part of what we're doing and not just one additional add-on. So the comprehensive plan, the way it's laid out, you're looking at these identified priority areas. So I said that we had 4, and I'll get them in a minute. But just this slide here, just kind of, I attempt to provide a structure to show you how the structure of the plan is laid out. So when you're reading the actual document, I would reference you back to this slide and then the next slide, and trying to understand how it's put together, because it can be confusing the way the various components are. So in this particular slide that you have here, what I put here for you is the way that a priority statement goes. So when you think about it, you have the priority statement, and then from the priority statement, you have what's called goal setting. Seems logical. We have the goal setting, and then from the goal setting, you have action plans. All right, so here's the goal. Now we got to develop action plans, and we do that. And so there may be multiple action plans depending on the priority, right? Depending on the goal statement. So in this example here, I have just 2 action plans. And from the action plans, they break out and go to professional learning, as well as is there a communication component to it? And in this example here, I gave you an example of one where, yes, there was professional development, and yes, there was a communication component related to it, and then that breaks off to its actual pieces. The second example was a no for the professional development, and so you can see it just stops there. So when you're reading through the document and you don't see professional development somewhere, it's because when you go back to the priorities, that particular action step did not require one. Okay. So again, when you're reading the actual document, I would refer you back to this slide and the previous slide to help keep it in order. So the 4 actual priority statements that we identified. One is institutionalizing the established profile of a CB learner. We put all that effort into doing that, and where we were headed with that is we identified the profile. As a district committee, we identified and worked on what we called the instructional model. And as part of that, the next steps were to look at developing rubrics for in the buildings, in the classrooms, and in the community, so that this is something that's broader than just in the actual classrooms themselves. So as part of this process, we're looking at, all right, let's take that next step. Let's create those rubrics. Let's provide professional development communication that goes along with that, so that the teachers in the classrooms are providing the feedback to the students and implementing this in an appropriate way. And then supporting families and community with similar type of rubrics as to how does this lived out in the home? How is this lived out as a young man or a young lady is growing and maturing in the Conestoga Valley School District? Priority 2 looks at the instructional model, which I just alluded to, and it's built upon the profile of a CV learner, and it's identifying those 3 key areas that I'll mention in a few minutes, and putting more meat to it, more application to what we're doing in the classroom, and I'll explain that when we get to that component. The third priority, yes.
On this. We once shown an action plan, if I remember, for the profile of a CV learner. Does that mesh with this? That was my concern. We've already developed that action plan, and then we come through comprehensive planning and we start doing it again.
Correct. No, and that's back to my point when I said about we wanted to acknowledge and build on what we already started, not create something different. So we worked very hard to tie them together, that they're complementary.
I just don't want somebody out there saying, now, which one of these am I supposed to be following? Which one am I supposed to be measuring when you've got 2 different sets of action plans all for the same program?
Right. No, this is all tied together.
Okay. I'll take your word. Try to see somebody cross-eyed saying, I can't follow all this.
Well, wait a minute. Your state program, you may be cross-eyed after you read it. So the third priority, looking at prioritizing the growth and achievement of all students, right? We want to focus on the growth and achievement of all students. And we saw that in our strategic plan, in our vision and mission from that we developed some time ago. We also see that when we look at the Future Ready Index, there are pieces in there that talks about what are all students doing? Are we providing that support for all students? And here's where that component of equity comes into play. So when you're thinking about equity and thinking about what are the barriers that exist that is in front of all of our learners, and what do we need to do as a school district to remove those barriers, or to, at the very least, help mitigate those barriers, so that every child, every CV learner has access to the learning, to the teaching and learning, and so that he or she can grow to their greatest potential. So it's looking at what are those barriers and how do we mitigate them so that everyone has equal access to that. And so there'll be looking at an equity audit, an equity plan that will come out of this process. And then expand opportunities for mutual benefit, our students and our community. Really, in a nutshell there, we're looking at how do we mutually support each other. One example would be internships. Internships are valuable experiences for our learners. But also, the community benefits from them by having our learners out there, their future workforce. And so, as an example of something that's mutually beneficial. So, again, what we did, and this will be, when we get to the executive summary part of this, it'll give us a little more meat on this. But the first priority talks about the profile of a CV learner. And so the way we broke this down is each of these priority areas is going to have one or more committees associated with it because they have multiple components. So for this very first one, there's one committee really needed. And so that we've identified administrators that will put together a committee of staff, community members, parents, to work on that particular project. So there's one committee for that priority. Priority 2, and looking at the instructional model, when you look at the instructional model, there's a lot of information in the instructional model. So that one has more action committees needed because they're big rocks, so to speak, that we need to work on. For example, MTSS, multi-tier support system. Those of you that have been in the district for a while, we used to use the terminology, and still do, RTII, right? MTSS is following in that and taking it further. So we identified MTSS as an area of need that falls within this priority that needs to be worked on and developed. The instructional model itself has a committee that will work on it and move it forward. And the individualized professional development plan that goes along with all this. And basically what that is, we're looking at, well, how can we modify, adjust professional development to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all professionals? You know, we talk about personalized learning. We want to look at how can we more personalize professional development. And you know, there are ways to do that. So there will be a committee that'll focus on that particular topic and priority. Priority statement 3, prioritizing the growth and achievement of all students. Again, several committees that are needed, closing the achievement gap of all students, especially underrepresented groups. There will be a group needed, committee needed to work on the equity plan and audit process. There will be a committee needed for the district trauma-informed comprehensive plan. Just a quick side note there, and this kind of ties into when you say about things that we're already doing and identifying a need to continue it, but more deeply. The trauma piece, the safety grants that we received from the state over the past several years, the second grant actually requires that we put together a trauma-informed plan. So it makes sense that, well, okay, if we're doing that, let's incorporate that into the bigger picture so it's not something that's kind of out there on its own, but interconnected to these other components. So we looked at something that we're already doing and need to do and should be doing, but incorporating it into the comprehensive plan itself and pulling it together. The next slide, again, this is, I provided this more as an idea or a framework as to how this whole thing lays out. So when you're looking at this, you have the measurable goal, right? That action step. And then you look at, it's a 3-year process. And what we try to do is follow a basic model. That year 1, we're looking at evaluating and developing. So what are we doing? What do we need to do? So it's evaluating and developing. Year 2 is implementing, all right? Based on the evaluation that we went through and developing, we're now implementing. And then year 3 is, all right, how are we doing? Did we achieve what we set out to do? So all these priorities and various action steps basically follow that model. So I just wanted to point that out to you so that you can see that that's the model. So when you're looking at the plan itself, you'll see this repeated over and over again. Okay, final timeline or next steps. So here we have, the goal is that over the next 28 days, as Dr. Z said earlier, that we're going to have, or the comprehensive plan as part of this process will be for public review over the next 28 days. We're going to have a hard copy in each of the buildings for people's convenience there. We're also going to have it, the actual plan itself posted on the district webpage. What we also created was a Google form for feedback, so people can just simply go to the Google form and provide feedback on the various pieces of that. And so when you look at the timeline there, we have the public review. It's going to be the website, talked about it being in the various buildings, the Google form for feedback, and then looking that we would go for approval on our second October meeting, if all goes well. Now, we have until really the end of November to submit it to the state, but this gives us some room in case we need to make some changes. Any questions about that part of it? And Dr. Z, if you wanted to open up the 104 page, and I'll start reading page 1. No. 104 pages? No, I will not. If you look at the executive summary sheet. You're out of order. You're out of order. All right, thank you. There we go. don't need to spend a lot of time on this because I mentioned a lot of the topics included in this, but we put this executive summary together, again, to provide you a reference point as you're reading the other document. So again, what this does is it breaks down the priority areas, it identifies the committee that's associated with it, and then underneath that, you have what's called outcome categories. So you have, for example, in the first one here, it says focus on continuous improvement of instruction. And so in that particular area, you have the measurable goals, and this particular one focuses on the instructional model, the profile of the CBA learner, and the rubrics then that go along with that. And so you can see there, it's following that 3-year structure and how that will work as we work through the process. The second page, again, takes the second priority, identifies the committees that are needed to go through the process, and then, again, outlines what will happen in each of those areas over the next 3 years. For example, the MTSS. Year 1 would be looking at assessing current MTSS-like practices, because we do not have an MTSS officially programmed in Conestoga Valley. I mentioned RTII. So we're looking at that and say, what are some of the like practices that we have in place that we can build upon? And what are some practices that we need to shift because it doesn't necessarily fit within the MTSS structure? Provide that as an example.
That this document here will take the place of that 104-page document that will be very, very difficult to try to follow, because when it's printed out of PDE, it just doesn't make sense. So this executive summary really explains what the plan is in 4 easy pages.
I think one of the other advantages is I would assume what's going to happen for this to be a living document. Next year, this time, we'll be looking at a progress report that will be able to follow each one of those points.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so the priority 2, it has the various components. I gave the one example, the MTSS, and you can see the audit, equity audit, an explanation, and the instructional model as it plays out there. The individualized professional development is on there. Priority number 3, again, identifying the committees that are needed for this process, and then looking at what are the various components necessary to move this forward. This is going to be obviously a work in progress, and it's meant to be that. You identify that big picture, and now we have to get down into the key pieces to make sure that we're moving this the way it needs to go. And this part of the model itself, I think, is very good, because it does, like you say, gives us opportunity to keep revisiting and look at progress. Are we doing what we said we did? One of the nice things that you as a board did was looking at district goals and how that is supportive of this document in this process. Okay, and then priority 4, again, as that looks there, this particular committee is going to be looking at opportunities to incorporate real-world experiences into the classroom, into the academic program. And how do we do that? Now, Mrs. Groth, another example of something that we're already doing, and we need to continue doing, but ties very nicely into this, is the 339 plan that we put in place several years ago. When we look at the career and work standards, a lot of good work there, but we need to take it deeper. We need to take it further. So tying that into this particular process is just prudent to do. So again, another example of something that we're already doing, but we need to take it deeper. So the 339 plan and looking at the career and work standards. The business roundtable, that's a term that we've had in Conestoga Valley, I think, since probably when I was first hired, like 20 years ago. But the idea of that business roundtable, again, revisiting that notion of, well, what does it mean to bring community together, business professionals as well as school professionals, and look at how can we better support our youth within this community, as they grow and mature, as they look at possibilities of what their future could look like, providing examples, opportunities for kids to explore. You know, when we were all in high school and so forth, we probably had ideas of what we wanted to do, or maybe glimpses of that, but having the opportunity to test some of them out and say, is this something I want to do, or is this something I don't want to do? And if it is, then how can we connect the community, the businesses, to the classroom? I was at a meeting several years ago with the Workforce Investment Board, and they were talking about some community program, and this group over here was talking about what they're doing. This group over on this side was saying, when did you start doing that? And they said, like 3 years ago. You know, it's so hard to connect the dots. And so doing this in a manner that connects the dots, that helps the educators and the community partners come together. Questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, ideas? Just to recap, yeah, there's 3 documents. The actual plan itself, as it's presented out of the comprehensive planning document. You have the executive summary that we put together for you, and then you have the presentation. I would go back to a couple of those slides in the presentation, and when you're reading, just to keep in mind the way this thing lays out, and it's following a certain flow. I think, at least for me, it helped me, you know, and I was part of writing the thing, to have that in front of me and say, okay, yeah, this is how this comes together. So you have those documents. We have it for public review. So we're going to be soliciting feedback, you know, so people can just comment on, going to the district webpage. Katie will put it up there with a link, and people can go to there and comment on that, and we'll take that public comment and see what we need to do with that. We'll then come back to you next month, and if all's going well, look for approval at the second October meeting, which I believe is the 18th or the 19th. And then we'll submit it to the state, and then get to work.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks, Don. Test instruments, this is Jill and Don. Nope, no Don. Just Jill.
That's me. So, what you have in front of you, and this is something we do annually, these are the various testing instruments that we use within the district. And so we bring that forward for you to see, and then for your approval. And one of the things, if you recall from last year, the list is significantly less. What we were able to do, Jill, Sarah, and I, was to take a really hard look at this and see where there were some overlapping instruments, things that were maybe outdated that we aren't using anymore, or slowly moving away from. For example, the grade assessment was an assessment that was on here last year. Well, we're no longer doing that. We're replacing that in some ways with IXL, so we added IXL in here as far as the benchmark assessment component of that particular program. So it's a greatly reduced list, but I think a very tight, intentional list for us to have and to follow. Questions about that? 10:13 p.m. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Siri?
All right, Dr. Z, do you have any comments about the superintendent?
No, the reason, normally we have superintendent's report, the second meeting, but we do have those 2 teachers we'd love to get in the classrooms officially. That's why we're bringing forward the superintendent's report. There are a couple of auxiliary personnel items on there as well, but the 2 key ones are those 2 teachers, one in the English classroom and one in the health and phys ed classroom.
So with that, board, I need a motion to approve the superintendent's report tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, starting with Dana.
Aye.
Go ahead, Diane.
Aye.
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 And
He
aye.
still sees her now.
All right, this is UZ.
Yep. Board, this is a encapsulation of our work during our last board retreat, and much appreciation and kudos to the board for aligning the district goals with a comprehensive plan. It's a perfect time to have a 3-year goal that aligns with a 3-year comprehensive plan so that we know where we're going for the next 3 years as a district. So we will continue to work on these goals, update them as we see fit, as the board sees fit, as we move forward through the 3-year plan. But you'll see that within the student learning, positive climate and management best practices and community partnerships, those are the same topics that we had the last 4 years. All we've done is put the comprehensive plan and fit them within those 4 topics.
Remember, when I talked to the board about having all these documents coordinated. And so when I got these, the first thing I did was comparing these goals and the comprehensive plan. And I found an amazing coordination. The wording was the same. I'm sure where you had picked it up. But if you read any one of these documents and then later pick up the other, you will see the same focus in all 3 documents. And I think that says a lot. I think at first I got a little lost because I thought there were a couple here in your goals that weren't in, I'm sorry, the other way around. There were some things from the comprehensive plan that didn't show up in the goals, but later I got so, I understood it. But if you take a look at these and read them, you will find the very same focus in everything in the district. No matter who you are or where you go to reference, where our focus is, you're going to hear the same story again and again, and hopefully you're going to hear it for 4 years because that's what we are going to be working on. I was really super pleased with the way these goals turned out.
Thank you.
Does this will be on consent?
It will be on consent next week.
Okay. All right, you have the agenda in front of you, board, for next week, or the tentative agenda for next week. This is the second time in our meeting for public comments. If there's anybody still here from the public, feel free. Here comes Diane.
I'm not as tall as Phyllis. I got to figure out how to get this down. Hi, Diane Tyson, 34 Highland Drive. Most of you up here know me. A lot of people in the audience may not. I've been coming to CV school board meetings for 22 years, and I've missed very few in 20, other than my dad, and maybe Mr. Brackhauser. I don't think anybody's here has been to more school board meetings than I have. I'm asking you, I'm very happy that you streamed tonight's meeting, and I'm going to ask you that you continue to do that in the future. And there's a couple reasons for that. I first started coming to school board meetings very similar to an evening like tonight. It was very contentious. It was about block scheduling. And there was multiple meetings there were a big public turnout. It was very contentious. And after everybody said their piece, most people, almost everybody, just like tonight, left the meeting, and I decided to stay. And I turned around and I looked, and I was the only member of the public that was still in the room. And the meeting was about the budget. And I'm thinking, boy, these people are spending $28 million, and I'm the only one here in the public to hear about it. So I started continuing to come to the school board meetings. And now our school board budget is $75 million, and I've been here to hear all those budgets all those years. That is one reason why I think you should continue to stream meetings. I don't think the public understands how long and how complicated and how challenging it is for you to put together a school budget. And especially in those April and May months when you're trying to figure out what you're cutting, what you're not cutting, and you have no idea what the state's giving you. And it is just a very, very complicated process that I think the public needs to have more exposure to. And maybe if you stream them, and I would recommend, like Columbia is considering to do, of archiving them. I did notice that some of the meetings that were streamed last year are not on YouTube. Some are, but not all of them are. So I would recommend that you consider looking at, archiving them or finding a way to keep them on to go back and look at them. And the reason for that is the meeting minutes do not reflect really your discussions, your questions, your deliberations of when you're making decisions about school matters. And it'll just have, in fact, even tonight, the people that spoke at the meeting, when they look at the meeting minutes, a couple, next month, they're going to see so-and-so spoke about parental rights of wearing masks. But you won't know the essence of what they said, or so you're missing all of that, which technology allows us to capture that today. And I think it's important, and a couple times I've seen things on the agenda and I want to go back and I remembered a discussion or something that happened, and I go back and look at the minutes and it just is a very simple statement, and you just can't jog your memory of what was actually discussed at the meeting. So now that we have this technology, I hope you would use it and get better at it. I've been to a lot of public meetings. I take part in public meetings in various community organizations and the township, and ours is the worst by far in terms of the technology and how it's being used to do public meetings. Everybody's not speaking into microphones. There's glitches here and there, and I think we could do a better job than that because I know other people do. Second thing real quick is just out of curiosity, I put my granddaughter, who's in first grade at Brownstown, on a school bus twice a week. She wears her mask, no problem, comes home, no problem. But I happen to notice, since, I know the school board and our district administrators are very data-driven, and we have a whole year of data now from last year of 100% masking in school, and we had 80%, of attendance in-person instruction last year, which is just amazing. And I commend you all for making that very hard decision last year. And like Mrs. Flick said last week, or last meeting, she was wrong and you guys are right, and you threaded the needle marvelously. But now that we have all that data, how can we look at that? I noticed on the website that there were a couple cases of COVID at Brownstown already this year, and we're only in the, second 2.5 weeks of school. So is there a way to give the public more data in terms of, and maybe it's not COVID, maybe it's just absences, because some people might not tell you they have COVID. They're not in school, but you might not know why they're not in school. So I don't know if it's something you want to kind of take a look at and say, okay, this is how we were last year with 100% everybody masked up, and now we're not so much. Is there a way? It might be a tipping point where people might see something happening where the statistics, the numbers might be able to tell a story there. So just keep that in mind if it's, you can find value in that, because I think there might be, because we were one of the very few schools that actually were open 5 days a week, from the first day of school last year to the last day of school last year, and everybody was masked the entire time. So take a look at that. And then the third thing was just, I'm so proud to be a CVU resident after tonight. I happened to watch a couple other school board meetings here and there that were streamed, obviously, just over this mask issue, and I have to really commend our CV parents for their decorum, their passion, but they really were very, their kids can be proud of them. I think our school board, everybody commended you for the job you do, and again, you guys don't get enough accolades, and I sit back there all the time and watch you, but you are true public servants, and I'm very proud tonight to be a CV resident based on how everybody's conduct was tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Any other comments? Any board initiatives tonight? Board matters.
I would like to echo what you said about being proud of how tonight was conducted. I think our community lived up to everything we believe it's about.
Agreed.
I have a quick question. I don't know. Dave, I know when you were reading your comments at the very beginning, a lot of people were not in the room, nor were they even paying attention. And I think you answered a lot of the questions that were brought up tonight. So I don't know if there's any way to get that out again in some way, shape, or form, but I would highly suggest that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, you know, they say a message has to be heard 4 times before it's effective.
True story.
All right. With that, Board, I'll take a motion to adjourn to executive session for legal and personnel reasons.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?